So, you're ready to build something awesome in the cloud. You fire up the Azure portal, and bam, you're staring at this giant list of options. VMs, App Service, AKS, Functions. It's a lot. Where in the world do you even begin? Well, in this explainer, we're going to slice right through all that confusion. I'm going to give you a super simple, clear framework for picking the absolute perfect Azure Compute Service for your app.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the problem that, let's be honest, we all face. Then we're going to climb this ladder of abstraction, starting with the most hands-on services and working our way up to the most automated. We're talking virtual machines, app service, the whole world of containers and functions. And you'll definitely want to stick around to the end because I'm going to wrap it all up with a practical decision cheat sheet that you can actually use. I mean, this is it, right? This is the classic moment of confusion. It can feel like you need a master's degree just to get a simple app online. But what if I told you that all of these choices, all this complexity, really just boils down to one single fundamental decision?
And here it is. This is the secret decoder ring for everything we're about to talk about: control versus convenience. Every single service falls somewhere on this spectrum. On one end, you get total granular control over every tiny little detail. And on the other end, you get maximum convenience, where Azure basically handles the whole show for you. So let's start at the very bottom of that ladder, where you have all the control. First up, Azure Virtual Machines, or VMs. This is what we call Infrastructure as a Service, IaaS for short. And it is truly the bedrock of everything else in cloud computing.
The best way to think about a VM is like owning your own car. You have total and complete freedom. You want to tune the engine? Go for it. You want to change the tires, paint it a wild color? It's all you. You control everything, right down to the nuts and bolts of the operating system. But, with that freedom comes a whole lot of responsibility. You're the one on the hook for the oil changes, the security patches, and all that fun maintenance.
So here's the bottom line. VMs are absolutely your best friend when you need that deep-level control. This is your go-to when you're doing a lift and shift of an older application that has very specific requirements, or maybe when you need some specialized hardware, like GPUs for machine learning. But the trade-off is huge. The operational overhead is all on you. You're responsible for patching, security, and yeah, you're paying for that machine even when it's just sitting there doing nothing.
Okay, so what if you're thinking, man, I do not want to deal with all that management stuff? Well, that brings us one step up the ladder to what's called Platform as a Service, or PaaS. And in Azure, that's App Service.
So if a VM is like owning a car, App Service is kind of like a long-term lease. You still get to drive it wherever you want, meaning you deploy your code, you control your application, but the leasing company, which is Azure in this case, handles all the big, messy maintenance items. You don't have to worry about the server itself or what operating system it's running. You just focus on what you do best, writing code. And this is where you really see that trade-off in action. You gain so much speed, and you get these incredible built-in features made just for web apps, like deployment slots that let you do zero downtime updates. It's awesome, but you give up that low-level OS control. You know what, though? For the vast, vast majority of web apps and APIs out there, this is the sweet spot. It just lets developers be developers. All right, let's switch gears and enter the world of containers. Now, if you're not familiar, containers are all about packaging up your application and all its little dependencies into one tidy, portable box. It's a super popular way to build and ship software, and Azure gives you two main ways to run them. Let's go back to our car analogy. Azure Container Instances, or ACI, is basically like hailing a taxi. You need to get from point A to point B right now for one specific trip. You don't want to buy a car, you don't want to lease a car, you just want the ride. ACI is exactly that for containers. It's the simplest, fastest way to just run a single container for a quick job and then be done with it. But what if you're not just taking one taxi ride? What if you're running an entire ride-sharing fleet? I'm talking hundreds of cars, drivers, and complex routes that all have to be perfectly coordinated. That is Azure Kubernetes Service, or AKS. It is the industrial strength powerhouse designed to manage incredibly complex, multi-container applications at a massive, massive scale. And this table just lays it all out perfectly. Just look at that complexity row. ACI is dead simple. You're up and running in minutes. AKS is powerful, but Kubernetes definitely has a learning curve. So the choice here becomes really clear. If you have a simple, one-off container task, ACI is your hero. But if you are building a big, complex microservices platform that has to scale and be super resilient, you invest the time to learn AKS. It's worth it.
we have climbed pretty high up our ladder of convenience, and now we're at the very, very top. This is Function as a Service, or FaaS. This is the ultimate inconvenience, where we strip away almost everything until all that's left is your code itself.
Time for our last transportation analogy. Azure Functions are like using public transit. You don't own a car, you don't lease one, you don't even hail a taxi. You just show up at the bus stop when you need a ride, you pay your fare for that one specific trip, and that's it. Functions are these little snippets of code that literally do nothing until an event triggers them. And the best part? You only pay for the split second they are actually running. The biggest win here is cost. It's just off the charts cheap. If you have a task that only runs every now and then, like, say, resizing an image right after a user uploads it, this is an incredibly cost-effective way to do it. But it's not a silver bullet for everything. Functions aren't great for really long-running jobs, and sometimes there's a tiny delay called a cold start if your function hasn't been used in a while. But for automation, for being the glue between different services, and for lightweight APIs, they are absolutely perfect. All right, we have covered a ton of ground. We've climbed that whole ladder from the raw control of VMs all the way up to the ultimate convenience of functions. So now, let's put it all together into a practical guide that you can start using like today. This is it. This is your cheat sheet. Just walk through these questions. First, do you absolutely need full control over the operating system? If yes, you're looking at VMs. Is it a pretty standard web app or an API? App Service is going to be your best friend. Got a single, simple container to run? That's ACI. A whole fleet of them for microservices empire? That's AKS. And finally, if you just need some code that runs on demand when something happens, you guessed it, Azure Functions. See? It's that simple. And of course, we've got to talk about money, right? Cost is always a huge factor. This table is a great little reminder of how you pay for these things. With VMs, you pay for uptime, even if it's idle. With App Service, you pay for your reserved plan. But as you climb that ladder of abstraction toward ACI, and especially functions, you start paying only for what you actually use, right down to the second or even the millisecond. Let's make this even more real. You're building a standard e-commerce website. That's a perfect fit for App Service. That background image processing we talked about, classic use case for functions. That ancient internal app that has to run on some old version of Windows Server, yep, that's a job for a VM. A huge, sprawling microservices platform for a bank? No question, that's AKS. And just need to run a quick data script? ACI all the way. These examples really help lock in the concepts. So, if you remember just one thing from this whole explainer, please make it this. Always, always start at the top of the ladder. Start with functions or app service. Start with the most convenient, most managed option that will actually work for your app. Only move down the ladder to things like VMs when you have a very specific, concrete reason that you need more control. Don't take on that extra management headache if you don't absolutely have to. And there you have it. We've unpacked that core trade-off between control and convenience. We've mapped out all the main compute services Azure offers. The choice isn't this confusing mess anymore. It's a logical, step-by-step decision. So the only question left is, what are you going to build?